Facebook, we're live again. This is interview number 1012. How you doing at home? I know how you little voyeurs, you little peeping toms are. You always watch after the fact. I get it. But you know what? It's okay because I don't multitask. There's no way I can interview and keep up with the chats. It's just not going to happen. Well, today we have a very special person here, a guest on Comic Spot. Yeah. Now make sure you subscribe on my YouTube, comedian Linda Marcus Smith, or I'm coming after you. And I am qualified with a 45 as a sharpshooter, so you got to subscribe. That's all I'm saying. That's going to get me banned off Facebook and TikTok all at the same time. Today's guest, let's get right down to it, is a performer. I can't read. I should wear my glasses. A performer with a one-man show, and he's always interviewing different interesting comedy guests. Today, you're going to get to know first, you're going to get to know the ancient baby boomer, and then you're going to get to know the other half of him, which is Ed Smyth. But for right now, welcome to the stage, ancient baby boomer. Woo!
Hello, Linda. It's so nice to be here with you.
Can you hear me okay?
Sure, yeah, I'm fine. I've got perfect 20/20 hearing. Normally here in the East Coast, I'm still in my bathrobe watching The Price is Right, but you were so nice to invite me on your show, and it's you young people like you that give me a lot of energy, because in the last of the ancient baby boomers, it's not easy getting a lot of energy to do anything.
I agree. It's so nice to have somebody on who's actually older than me.
Well, sure. There's not many of us left from back in the day when we had dial-up telephones and 78 RPM records. That's why I like to go on stage and talk to nice young people like you to let you know the difference between back then, back in my day, what you kids enjoy now.
Exactly. Us young people, we have a hard time trying to relate to you old people. We don't even know how to talk to an old geezer anymore.
Yeah, sure, even you young people, you get on this, what do you call it, the socialized media, and you can type one little thing and insult thousands of people in one group at one time. Back in my day, we had to insult people one phone call at a time. You have to pick up the phone and you have to dial the rotary. And you say, "Hello, Roger. Yeah, this is George. I just want to let you know you're a no good, commie-loving anti-American. Okay, bye-bye." You'd have to make 99 other phone calls like that. And by the end of the day, with all that calling, your tongue hurt for days.
Have you ever called people in the middle of the night to wake them up and tell them to go pee?
Oh, no. Well, I gotta do that myself. Yeah, it's not easy,
I used to call people out of the phone book. Do people even know what a phone book is?
No, nowadays, young people got all these hoopy doopy things on their phones there, like what's it called? Googly eyes, goggles. Back in my day, when we had to look up something, we had to use Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
If you wanted to know the annual production of bauxite in Finland, you go to the F volume and you try pulling that down, and you'd pull all the volumes down, and they would fall on your chest, crush washing you while your chest fluid started drowning you, and it hurt for days. Yeah.
You know, I found Jesus Christ in the encyclopedia.
Yeah, it's easy enough. That's in the J volume, or is it C, comma Christ, C, Jesus Christ in the in the in the C? Who knows? Yeah, yeah.
Just think if Jesus Christ was on TikTok, what a following he'd have.
Yeah, the socialized media, it's like you kids and they're using using hoopy doopy video games on their phones. Back in my day, the only games we could play was lawn charts. You grab a lawn chart, you swing it up in the air, and you throw it across the lawn, and it would go sailing across and penetrate your brother's chest, and it would hurt for days. Yeah, yeah, it's just something back then. Yeah.
So how was it growing up in an outhouse?
And so growing up in where?
In an outhouse.
And she did. Well, well, it was really tough. If somebody was in charge of, bringing out the honey pot in the morning. It's not the same. No, you young people, you got, what do you call in your toilets? The bidot, bidet, bidet, what? It's not the same.
My goodness
I can
sakes.
keep going. I don't want to complain for all your lovely audience.
How's your health? I mean, they say on the news that if you live long enough, you get osteoporosis. Have you gotten brittle bone? Do you like peanut brittle bone? What do you like?
No. I try to exercise as much as I can. It's not the same like with you young people. Yeah, I tried one of those. What do you call it? The Pelican bike, the Policio bike. Back in my day, the only exercise we ever got was watching Richard Simmons sweating with the oldies. Put the VHS tape in it, and you'd watch this chunky elf dancing around to Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock. And you lost weight because your stomach hurt so much you couldn't eat for days. Yeah. It was something back then, yeah.
When you upchuck, you actually work your ab muscles.
Yeah, exactly. That's the exercising was different. It's just like nowadays. You young people, you enjoy getting to watch teen movies with real teenagers. Back in my day, we had to watch teen movies with old people, like the entire cast of Grease. You'd see this 49-year-old Stockard Channing. Every time she tried to sing, her dentures would fly out. Okay, yeah, it was different back then. Yeah.
You had it really rough. It's amazing that you have such a great personality after all you've been through.
Oh well, it's all the kind of the hip groovy music we used to listen to as kids. Like you kids now, you listen to these rock and rollers with the on your, what do you call it, specify, Spotify. Back in my day, all we had to listen to were 45 RPM records. You'd have a sock hop at your house, and you invite everybody over, and we'd be doing the frog and the mashed potatoes, the dive, and people would say, "Oh, that's a really hip Bobby Vinton record you got. What's the title?" And it'd be spinning around so fast, your eyes would get crossed trying to read it, and they would hurt for days. Yeah.
everything seemed to happen for days back then. Now things don't even happen for an hour.
Oh, even you young people, you listen to these rock and rollers, and they all got little tiny short names like what's their name? The Cardio B and Banana. Back in my day, all we had were rock and rollers with multi-syllabic names like Engelberg Humperdinck. And you'd run out of breath introducing him to famous people of Russian literature and science like Engelbert Humperdinck. Meet Sergei Eisenstein. He's going to film Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov taking a helicopter ride with Igor Sikorsky. And after saying all that, our lungs would hurt for days.
It's another thing that happened for days.
Oh yeah, things are much more faster today. Even now, you young people driving around your wackadoodle electric cars there with all the pretty lights. Back in my day, all we had to ride in was Corvairs and Pintos. Safe at any speed. You'd be sitting in the back and somebody would hit the rear end and the car would blow up and our little helpless bodies would fly into the air. And the last thing we could think about as we hurtled toward Earth was, this is going to hurt for days. Yeah, it was something back then. You probably remember, Linda, back in the days when we didn't have these carbonated fruit drinks, like kids drink nowadays. Back in my day, all we had to drink was Kool-Aid. You'd be outside playing, throwing crab apples at each other's heads, and we'd get a real thirst for some purple liquid with red dye number 5. and we'd shout out, "Hey, Kool-Aid!" And then this giant pitcher of Kool-Aid in human form would come crashing through the wall and showering our little bodies with huge chunks of concrete. And it would hurt for days.
I always loved it when they took Kool-Aid and froze it into ice cream, like they'd make popsicles out of Kool-Aid.
Yeah, we sometimes throw that at each other's heads. The main thing was how much bodily injury could we give each other between that and the lawn jarts penetrating sternums, yeah.
Do you remember playing dodgeball?
Yeah, the idea, could you permanently injure someone? That was the name of all the games. Even when we're playing Monopoly, to see if we could get one of the kids to swallow a hotel. Yeah. I'm getting tuckered out just complaining about all this stuff. Maybe it's time for me to go take my nap.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on to Comic Spot. Don't forget to go to YouTube and subscribe. I know you're old, but you'll be able to figure it out because I'm way younger than you, and I figured it out.
Sure. I'll go get the nice young man here who's
Could you bring Ed Smyth back? I want to talk to him. Thank you. Ancient baby boomer, you guys. Woo!
Well, thank you, Linda.
Hi, how are you doing, Ed?
Sure. Outstanding and still improving, just like we talked about with Zig Ziglar.
Yes, Zig Ziglar. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Ed Smyth. Ed,
thank you.
Every time I'm
mutual.
What?
I said the feeling's mutual.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's not why I said it, but I'll take it. Ed,
But you've been
every
doing a lot
time.
as well, Linda.
What?
you've been doing a lot as well. I mean, you're really making a lot of inroads in the business, and I
Thank
see you popping up all the time with various things that you're up to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I plan on trying to do some things before I croak. So most of that revolves around comedy. So, I'm not gonna live forever. I better make inroads quickly.
Sure, that's a good idea. Yeah, exactly. Optimize the time you have, right?
Yeah. A few minutes ago I was feeling really young with
Mhm.
ancient baby boomer
Oh
on.
yeah,
He's one
sure.
of the many characters that you do.
Uh-huh.
And let's talk about you, and we'll get into ancient baby boomer in a bit,
Okay.
but
Sure.
let's go back in a DeLorean and go
In the
time
DeLorean.
travel back to little Eddie Smythe.
Oh boy. Okay.
Little Eddie. How many
Yeah.
brothers and sisters? What kind of parents? How did you grow up? What made you you, uniquely
Oh
you?
boy. What do we got? 10 minutes?
You can go as
I don't know.
long
How
as
do I
you.
crystallize this into 1 minute? Well, I got two younger brothers, and as far as how I develop my own outlook on life and personality, I don't know. I guess being the oldest, I used to then to always kind of be more cognizant of all the little things in life, because things were always seemed unfair. It's very typical is, when the second and third kid comes along, parents get more and more lenient, and so the oldest feels like they had an undue burden of all the rules that suddenly became relaxed by the time the third kid came up by. Like when we were driving, is we had the 9 o'clock curfew, and then my parents would go berserk if I pulled in at 4 minutes after 9. And my second youngest brother, they said, well, try to get in by 9:30, just drive slow. By the third one came around with his license, the instructions were, well, just drive slow and give us a call if you're going to be out later than midnight.
It's a good thing they didn't have 12 kids.
Well, certainly, yeah. I wouldn't have any shoes. It's funny
So
you
were
mentioned about outhouses, because as we're kids growing up, yeah, our grandparents had a camp out uh, along the riverside, and they were camps built in the 20s, I'd say, and they all and not many of them had indoor plumbing. There were still outhouses. So yeah, I grew up a little bit knowing about those.
Oh, cool. Now, where exactly did you grow up and where exactly do you live now?
Well, it's easy to answer. It's upstate New York, here in the Troy area. Yeah, I haven't moved very far. It's funny is that as you get older and people move to different places for their work, is the cost of living is pretty manageable up here in upstate New York. So really, the key is that if you don't have to move someplace, if you're working remote, or have your own little office, is you can live just as well in a comfortable house with a modest income versus what you'd have to earn in, say, if you lived in San Francisco or New York or Atlanta.
Wow. Now, what's Troy, New York famous for besides ancient baby boomer and Ed Smythe?
Yeah. Well, you must know about Uncle Sam, right?
What?
The origin story of Uncle Sam?
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't.
Really?
I
Oh,
really
let's
don't.
pull up an iceberg and lend it here. Okay, well, back in the turn of the 1800s, during there was a meat packer, Sam Wilson, and during the War of 1812, he had a contract with the federal government to supply barrels of meat. So the locals used to jest whenever the barrels were stamped with the U.S., it stood for Uncle Sam, and it stuck. So that's how Sam Wilson became the Uncle Sam, and then of course the it was now then we get up to World War I, is where I forget the cartoonist's name who developed the famous recruiting poster of Uncle Sam pointing, saying, "I want you to join." And so that's how that kind of that visual, that iconic image of Uncle Sam came about from that. So that's
Oh,
Troy's main what do you call it? Claim to fame or point of interest.
because that Sam was from Troy?
He was a meat packer in downtown Troy, yes.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
stamped his barrels US, which the locals jibed stood for Uncle Sam.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What else is around Troy, New York that's worth noting?
Well, you mean like historically?
Historically, or what's it famous for? Why do people go there? Do
Well,
people go there?
well, the other fame, in fact, Troy is known as the Collar City because during a large part of the previous century, from let's say the 1890s up through the Depression, it was the main source of manufacturing for shirt collars. You know, back in the day when it wasn't practical to wash your clothes every day, people didn't have home washers, so men would wear detachable collars because usually, as you know, it's the collar that gets stained and sweaty first before the rest of the clothing does. So there were a number of factories in downtown Troy that made detachable collars. Arrow was the most famous of them. That's how they got known as the nickname, the Collar City.
I'll be darned.
There, how about that? You know, it's like the tour guide here, Linda.
That's awesome. So growing up, you had two younger brothers and a mother and a father. And
Yeah.
I was the child number 3 that you spoke about. I was the one that,
Okay,
yeah, I was the lucky one. So
gotcha.
growing up, how did your sense of humor, your personality develop? At home, with a
Yeah.
babysitter, in the schoolyard, grade school,
Well,
high school? Where did it come out?
oh, I don't think it came out as much as just influenced by my early teens. I got hooked onto Monty Python. It was first being broadcast on PBS, and I think it was 1975 when it first started. That and Doonesbury cartoons. My mom used to want be puzzled why I would be laughing so out loud with Doonesbury, but it was such pointed, wicked wit, especially political humor. Gary Trudeau, cartoonist for Doonesbury, and then in late '76, early '77, Saturday Night Live was finally being broadcast by our local TV station after months of resistance because their attitude is they didn't want to pick it up from the network because it would interfere with their late night movie. So those are the early things that I would say sharpened and influenced the kind of sense of humor that I enjoy.
Monty Python, that's incredible stuff. Incredible.
Yeah, yeah, very, very wicked, absurdist humor, and very different from back in the '70s. Is the only other comedy, if you will, that you'd ever see was the traditional Catskill type comedians showing up on the Merv Griffin show, like Alan King. And he'd come on stage. Hey, how you doing? Hey, and he'd do the two liners. Hey, I ran into my bishop, to my pastor the other day. Bada bing, that kind of thing. But although I always enjoyed David Brenner. Yeah, because he was a little bit different. He had a more eclectic personality that that was a little different from the average Catskill type shtick.
It was. He was
Yeah.
my favorite Jewish comedian, and I got to meet him and talk with him at a lot of times. You want to
Oh
hear
yeah.
about it real fast?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm downtown in Vegas in, I think, the 80s, way before I did comedy. But I always wanted to do comedy. Just didn't, the time wasn't right. There was
Yeah.
one thing or another. So I'm watching him on a TV monitor. It's on a loop, him doing his comedy. So I'm standing at this booth watching this TV screen, like this close to the TV screen. I'm mesmerized watching
Face right
him.
in. Yeah.
And somebody tapped me on my shoulder from above, like this. And I turned around. It was David Brenner had been watching me, watching him on TV. And he goes, "How do you like that guy on the TV screen?" I said, "You're my favorite living Jewish comedian. All the good ones have died. Now it's you." And that entered into where we kept talking on MySpace and on
Yeah.
Twitter, and I'd send him jokes and he'd tell me there's no punchline or, and we kept bantering back and forth, and I kept copies of it all.
How about that? That's something.
I love David Brenner. Now you got me on
Yeah,
a topic I'm interested in so
sure.
much in David Brenner and keeping his memory alive. He's a great
Oh,
guy.
indeed. Right. So that was back in the days when it wasn't easy to get into the world of stand-up. You just had to scratch your way through doing nightclubs and bar mitzvahs. And Steve Martin talks in his biography about doing a stand-up show at a drive-in theater.
Wow.
And of course, and then of course, what was it? Jay Leno mentioning early on in his just as it gets started, he did he did a show at a strip club, or was it? Oh, or was it the anecdote was it was a place called the Cavern where it was all dark and everyone had minor caps, and he had no idea. The only way he could know the audience was enjoying it if they actually said something or clapped. Yeah, so it wasn't easy back then.
Oh, well, so you go through school and you say that you got influenced by Monty Python. And
Yeah.
do any of your schoolmates from grade school or high school recall you being funny?
No, not necessarily. No, I was. My people might say if they recall anything of me that I was a bit of a loner or a standoff. But it wasn't that. I was just focused on my doing my own thing, and it just didn't dawn on me about connecting on a wider basis with folks. Though, excuse me, I do recall though, in the senior year we had a speech class, and so that was the thing that I had fun with, because while everyone was doing normally a regular formal speech with the typical 3x5 index cards, I would draft up really wacky, kooky speeches, and we just had fun doing it. It wasn't really a stand-up act. It was just that I made it as goofy and absurd as I could think of.
Did people love that?
Yeah, yeah, because I was having fun with it, and of course I was trying to make it funny. And of course, with 17-year-olds, is that they're just not, they're awkward and just not comfortable being up in front of people speaking. So it kind of was a digression from the usual. Well, you get somebody that stands there and they cross their arms, they cross their legs, and they're reading off their index cards one at a time like this. And just that awkwardness and tension, it's palpable. You can everybody feels it. So
I
yeah,
love
that's some of what I did that I think that I enjoyed in high school.
That's a possible new character for you to do, to be Tony the teenager, the awkward teenager.
Well, I tried with Farmer Ted Yergesen to do his read his bits while taking index cards one at a time. I just don't think people hone in on that. I think that just it's like it's like a false flag. They don't understand, why am I reading from index cards? In other words, you gotta if you're gonna build comic tension, they've got to find a place of release, or you got to cue them in on the place of release. And I think with the cue cards is they don't get it.
I'll be darned. Huh.
Yeah, yeah. It's the
I
same way
figured
I tried out doing something called one chord Jake. This goes back about a year ago, Linda. I was at a general open mic, and somebody was playing guitarist playing a song, but he didn't really have a strong command of the guitar. It was basically playing like two chords, like dunk, 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 dunk. And I thought, wouldn't that be funny if you had one guitar and you just played one chord? And I made one chord Jake, just stringing one chord, but doing every type of musical genre possible, from operas to musicals to rap to country and western to hardcore metal, and they all sound exactly the same because he's going dunk, 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 dunk. But I could sense people are watching and they're grinning, but they don't get it.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, not every funny idea can translate to something that the audience enjoys.
And then you have like some audiences will really get you, and other audiences will sit there and not have a clue.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge. That release of comic tension is something I picked up from Steve Martin reading his bio, where he purposely designed his act where there were no punchlines. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he's choosing to let the audience decide when to laugh. They have to break their own tension. And he offered it's pretty lonely and frustrating because if people don't get it, they just think it's stupid. So, I personally experienced that. So
Wow,
I know the feeling.
I bet.
So in some cases, you have to then figure out a way to kind of cue them in on the fact that it's okay to laugh at what I'm doing rather than with. Because I know that's the hardest part is because so many people do observational humor that naturally an audience is conditioned for that. You do a setup, a punchline, set up a punchline. It could be with story form with a kicker at the end, or it could be a three-liner, but it's always that same formula. But to just do something absurd where you got to have people start laughing. One of the best compliments I've gotten, Linda, on Zoom shows, when Oog Son of Og comes on and someone's texting saying, "I'm laughing and I don't understand why." And I read that and I go, yeah, I've hit the sweet spot.
I've noticed that when you come on a Zoom comedy show and you start in, it takes the audience a couple beats
Right.
to process what they're watching.
Right. And they
And
already have a judgment filter going through their head. And I can sense that is that if most of the audience, which tends to be comedians at a Zoom mic, that judgment filter isn't allowing them to cross over into the next plane. They're wondering, well, what is he doing and what's the joke?
it's so funny. And like some people seem to get it very fast. Like the instant I saw you, I got it.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Linda. That's indeed my intent. I don't want to frustrate or bog down anybody. Rather is just it's almost like saying to someone, just release the inner child in you. If you think it's funny, then just laugh. I use that anecdote about someone saying, I'm laughing, but I don't understand why." Well, that's the whole point. You don't have to make reason of it.
Exactly. Nowadays, with all the crap going on in the world,
Yeah.
I think it's the perfect time for people to laugh, just to laugh.
Sure. Oh, indeed. Well, that's my intent. Being up that, I was thinking about this on this interview here that if you're getting into this topic is the built-in challenge, of course, and it's just a built-in. I'm saying this is a benign way. It's not a critique. Rather, is that it sounds like a cliche to say 99.9% of all comedians do observational humor, but indeed, that's the case. I can't think. I'd have a hard time thinking of anyone that I know even on the professional level that just does the kind of the absurdist type of humor. Um, I recently came across an article about list the top like the top 20 alt comedians, right? And as I was searching through the YouTube, looking up each of one of the videos, roughly about half of them were truly alt comedians. The others were just have kind of an alternative personality. They were quirky, but it was still some type of observational humor. Where they're doing it. They're saying, well, what about this thing? And like Mitch Hedberg is a perfect example of that. Really quirky, odd comedian, but it's still the core of it is still an observational humor type of setup. He's the classic one is, why am I getting a receipt for a donut? you know, and you just like and you could take that kind of premise and you could apply it to any other type of comedian, like um, uh, Jerry Seinfeld. You can see him doing the same kind of premises. Why did I get a receipt for a donut? You know, he's just doing it in his own particular personality and style. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a complaint at all. Rather, it's just a particular challenge, and I keep trying to fine tune it. So to your point is, as long as people are willing to embrace it, I'll lead them along. I remember someone one time saying, quoting from I think it was George Carlin quote, saying that a good comedian is like a taxi driver. People will trust you if they know where you're going.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
So I
that
think
so much.
Yeah, so I think that that's a critical thing, you know, when you think about absurd comedians that I've always enjoyed in the past, like Judy Tenuta and Emo Phillips, for example, is that you can you're not quite sure what they're up to, but they're doing it with so much confidence that you're willing to allow them to do what they're doing. And of course, you know, you're releasing the laughter and watching it.
Yes.
I remember the very early days of cable when I first saw Judy Tenuta, and I would scratch my head and go, I I sense something is funny, but I don't understand what she's trying to do. And it was only years later that it finally dawned on me. See, a victim of again that same thing is, oh, I get it. She's not trying to do anything that's in your face. Rather, it's just so wacko and absurdist that you're laughing at her or at what she's saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't care. My comedy is very self-deprecating, and I
Uh-huh.
welcome people to laugh right at me.
Right.
I think it's hilarious
Sure.
if they're laughing right at me. I don't care.
You know what? Actually, you know what, Linda? That's a good point because now you actually think of like some of the comedians before the modern era who did stand up like two-liners and three-liners, but they weren't really serious about anything they're really saying. And I think your self-deprecating humor of Phyllis Diller, you know, it's now as an older adult, I can appreciate more of how her act was than when I was a kid. And just listening to her jokes. So her jokes herself have the merit because they're the typical set up punchline. But it's the whole point of where she's just doing all this self-deprecating stuff, and it's obviously none of it's real. And now I can watch it and go, oh yeah, yeah, I get it right. It's just so off the wall, right?
Yes. And everything about me that I do that's self-deprecating is
Yeah.
100% real. And then when they're
Uh,
laughing about
Yep.
me being real, about
Yep.
me putting myself down to make them laugh, it
Yep.
makes me laugh.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And just the thought occurred in my head as you're saying that is that yeah, because now you're enabling them to kind of empathize with the same kind of humor that you're allowing for yourself. You're laughing at yourself and you're inviting them to laugh with you.
Yeah,
Am I
it's
on the right track?
it's magical. Like you must feel it when they get on board with what you're doing. It's the same thing.
Yeah, but it's a different plane. You're right. We reach the same point, but in the case where you said it's real but self-deprecating, it's a laughter of empathy. The laughing, oh yeah, yeah, that happened to me. That's why so many comedians do dating jokes because it resonates with the same audience they're performing to. For what I'm doing, I'm happy just to get them to crack up at just the oddity of it. And I keep using the word absurd. I got to figure out another. Oh yeah. Next time we talk, I'll look up some more words on my thesaurus. Absurd.
Was
But
that
that's the
his
point is that
was
they're laughing at what I'm doing. I'm not trying to make a point. And as you know, as we started this particular topic, is that's where it's an uphill struggle at times because I get a sense that they're trying to figure out what's the punchline. When am I going to go ta-da or
yes.
yeah.
It's funny. It's it's almost where you could in the middle of doing some character, you could stop and go, I think they're waiting for a punchline. It's not coming.
Um, Gilbert Gottfried was great for that.
Oh,
There's another one. Back, you think about absurdist type of approach, right? Yeah. I recall one time seeing Gilbert live at a club up here in upstate New York, where people are really kind of low key and almost stodgy. And he started going, "Well, I know what is not funny what I'm doing here, but maybe I should just tell jokes about the difference between cats and dogs. Then later on, you'll be driving home with a giant steering wheel, and you'll be going, that guy was really funny. There really is a difference between cats and dogs, isn't there, honey?" So, yeah, kind of like pointing out the obvious. But I think that's true of any performer, any comic, I should say, is having the ability to call out the moment. Um, I About 2 years ago, I saw Paula Poundstone live on stage here in Troy, and what's amazing is number one, she doesn't have an opener; she just comes out on her own introduction, and it's an hour and a half of practically all crowd work. She'll get into some little routines about her cats, but she'll just work the entire room, and then she'll call out the obvious. It's like, well, I can tell you people must be been drinking before I got on stage here, because obviously you're not talking coherent now. Something like that. Yeah.
I love crowd work. I don't know if I would want to watch an hour and a half of it unless it's superb crowd work.
Well, she's a master at
Really?
at her craft. I mean, I actually went to see her because I enjoy listening to her on NPR's "Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me." That ability to instantaneously come up with a silly line, or a wickedly smart punchline. That's tough to do, but she definitely has the ability to pull it off. Yeah.
Have you met her and talked with her?
No, no, no. I just saw her on stage.
How many people get into a theater in Troy? Do they have theaters there?
Well, these are interesting questions, Linda.
I know I'm trying not to be too smart and overwhelm you.
No, it's okay. Troy is kind of a small city. How many people can you actually fit into a? What does the whole city hold? 100 people?
Look, I'm going to get a phone call from the mayor.
No, no. No. This is Troy Music Hall. I think it seats something like 450 or something like that. To answer
Wow,
your question,
that's awesome. So who is your favorite comedian, living or not, male and
right?
female?
Well,
And why?
yeah. Well, from back in the '80s, I always enjoyed Gilbert Gottfried, Emo Phillips, Judy Tenuta. I mentioned those folks. Uh, and then I don't know, comedy got to me kind of either washed down, where you had all the Comedy Channel had anybody who was anybody, do stuff, or very ribald, like the Dice Man. By the way, I saw one time, I rented a video of what was called like a Rodney Dangerfield special, and from 1981. So when he came out, the Dice Man, Andrew Dice Clay, right? He came out. He did this persona of this rugged leather jacket wearing New Jersey guy, and he was just overplaying it so much you were really laughing at him. And he's going, hey, bada bing, the boat. But and what happened was people actually turned where people were empathizing and laughing with him rather than at him, and he melted. He was very good at it. So
Wow.
a different persona. Anyway, so
Huh.
more recently, you know, I went to see Neil Hamburger about 5 months ago in Albany, and so I kind of like him because it's a very, very different type of act. And belatedly, I'm just starting to see Mitch Hedberg videos, and now I'm starting to absorb and understand why he was so good and so different from most stand up. Yeah, so that's been mainly the people I can point out to. Yeah, I don't have.
Have you-
It's hard because again, since I have to characterize this carefully. People who do observational humor, I can admire and appreciate what they're doing. It may just not necessarily strike me as funny. Perhaps like if you give it an analogy, it's if I'm hanging out in a room full of bluegrass folkies, I can see why they're so good at what they do, playing the mandolin. It's just that I'm not into it. I listen to jazz. So I could say, oh yeah, he's a really good mandolin player, or yeah, that's a fine fiddle tune. Yeah, I just don't listen to that music. Same way with observational humor. I just don't watch it or too much. My
Wow.
favorite guy that I'd seen though in Zooms, and I don't see him anymore. I was the only one cracking up. His name is, or he called himself Darko the Clown. He uh, he would be he'd be slouching in a sofa with a Mexican wrestling mask, and he just did a string of non sequiturs that just it was almost like gibberish. And of course, everyone else on the screen is watching like this, like, and to me, I'm loving it. It's great. It was so because I think I I don't think I'm not quite sure. It was really hard to tell if he was doing it on purpose or he's just so self-unaware that it's funny just watching this guy. So I miss Darko the Clown.
I wonder where Darko's at.
I do not know. I tried looking him up. He only had a smattering of videos he ever posted on YouTube. Yeah.
Hopefully he's still alive. Well, let's go into a topic aside from you as in the comedy world. And
Okay.
I want to, I know from speaking with you that you're a military veteran. You were in the Coast Guard,
Well, I
which
served. I'm not a veteran, but yeah, fair
he
enough.
doesn't call himself a veteran. That's how humble
No, the
he
real
is.
veterans are the people who put their lives on the line or served several tours of duty in Iraq or Afghanistan. Afghanistan. Those are the veterans. I was safe here in the United States.
Well,
Worst thing I could do is slip on a deck.
in the Coast Guard, did you have to rescue people in the water?
Come on, Linda. What kind of question is that? You know the answer to that one. Are you just beating me up? Is this one of those softball interview questions? Yes.
Let's-
Yeah. The idea obviously is you learn early on in boot camp is that regardless of what unit or ship you're on, the first priority mission is search and rescue. If that mission is not active or been resolved, then there's secondary mission. So yeah, like a small boat station, for example, their primary duty mission is search and rescue because that's why the station is there. So I didn't get to do much of that, but there was one time we rescued a bunch of drunken Canadians on a catamaran that were stuck on a breakwater. You know the rocks that go out on a harbor to keep the harbor waters safe. Yeah, they crashed their catamaran up on it, and of course they're like this. "Well, we're so glad you guys could make it. We were stuck here."
Where were you stationed in the Coast Guard? In Troy?
Okay, so what it was is a combined program of active duty and then reserve time. So active duty was boot camp and then small boat school, and then I finished up at what was called Marine Safety Office in downtown Albany. That was mainly doing ship inspections at the Port of Albany for safety inspection, safety navigation. And then the rest of the time was that I served was reserve time in a reserve unit here in Albany and later on in Syracuse and Oswego.
And where did you go to boot camp, pray tell?
Oh, you don't know Coast Guard boot camp? There's only one now. It's in Cape May, New Jersey. There was one in California, and I can't remember where it was, but that closed in the early 80s, I believe.
Super. Do you have,
Yeah.
what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you in the military? And the funniest thing ever happened to you in comedy?
Oh my gosh, boy. Oh boy, Linda.
Or
Funniest-
one or
oh, I
the
know, I
other.
know. Okay, tell you what, I do have a story. Yes, I have an anecdote. Yes, yes, I do. Okay, so this was in boot camp, and of course, you're familiar with boot camp. The idea is to break the drill instructors or or drill sergeants or whatever branch that you serve in. Their main job initially is to break down your personalities and your individualism, and make you and everyone else in your team rebuild as a one coherent unit. You know that function. Okay. So there was, I think it was a Saturday morning where we were allowed to sit out in the hallways and do whatever we want to do, polish our boots or sew our clothes, because there was a cleanup team inside the barracks who was mopping and then waxing the barrack floors. So the only direction we had was that given to us very sternly was we had to keep silence. So as you know, that usually there's the DI will pick on somebody inevitably for any tiny fraction. So on one end of the hallway, someone was getting picked on by a drill instructor, or in this case here, what they call him, the company commander, and being forced to do push-ups. And then his first mistake, which just it just tumbled and everything else in the story, is he goes, "I'm real thirsty. Can I get a drink?" And the company commander goes, "You want a drink? You want a drink?" And he calls somebody else and tells him to go fill up a bucket. So this kid comes back with a bucket of water and he goes, "You want a drink? Here you go." And he splashes the other kid with the bucket and he puts it on his head. And of course, the second kid who ran to get the bucket, he starts cracking up. And the company commander starts jumping down his throat. "You think it's funny? You think it's funny?" So he makes them march around with a kid in the bucket on his head singing, "Ha, ha, 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 ha." And the other guy behind him also is laughing. He tells him he has to go laugh at him. So there are two guys marching side by side, one with a bucket on his head, the other guy behind him going, "Ha, ha, 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 ha." Now, the rest of us, we're sitting polishing our boots or sewing our clothes, and we're like this. Don't dare grimace or say anything. I'm biting my tongue. I remember that. I'm like this, Linda. And you're daring not to look. So, so but but this guy Kevin, he cracks up, and so he gets jumped on by the company commander. "What are you laughing at? What do you think is funny? You think this is funny? What do you got in your pocket?" And he pulls out his pocket. He got band-aids, and he goes, "What do you know those band-aids? What are you gonna? You gonna walk an injury? Are you a medical supply unit?" And so he sticks the band-aids all on his nose, and he makes him march around the two guys going, "Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha." The third guy has to sing, "I am stuck on band-aids because band-aids stuck on me. I am stuck on band-aids because band-aids stuck on me." And they're marching around like this in the whole quad. And the rest of us, our chests are hurting. My chest is hurting because I don't dare laugh. So I think I still have a permanent indentation on my tongue where I was biting it as hard as I could to make myself not laugh. So that's my favorite boot camp story.
That's hilarious.
Oh, my favorite.
Hilarious.
Now, what did you say? My favorite comedy story?
Yeah, in comedy, the funniest thing you've ever seen on stage or experienced when you've been on stage, either from
Oh,
audience member or from another
that I
comedian,
watched or experienced.
either anything you've
Oh,
observed or experienced.
well, I mentioned about Monty Python. One of the funniest things I ever saw as a kid, and I laughed so hard that actually my stomach, the old cliche, my stomach hurt. But actually, I was hyperventilating. Was in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when the killer rabbit comes out. I, 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 I couldn't laugh. I couldn't breathe. And the other was on Saturday Night Live. I used to love the Mr. Bill show. So
Mr.
bizarre.
Who?
Mr. Bill show. The little puppet, not a puppet. He was made of the little clay guy, Mr. Bill. You don't know the Mr.
Oh,
Bill show?
no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go
Um,
look at Monty Python again and
well,
refresh
this was the
myself.
Saturday Night Live. Yeah. But anyway, I'm digressing. Actually, one of the cutest times I ever had in my life doing stand up was a time I was doing an open mic out in central New York, and I used to do a bit where I do single cell balloon animals. So, blow up a balloon, and it's an amoeba. So I blow up this balloon, and then the whole point to make the funny is you elaborate like you're making a real balloon animal. All you're doing is just squeaking the balloon. An amoeba. Well, this dog jumps out from the crowd and starts jumping up and trying to bite the balloon. It turns out he's a service dog in training. He's not quite fully trained. And so the whole audience is cracking up. The service dog is going, I'm holding the balloon up there. And it totally blew the act, but everybody loved it. It had nothing to do with my act. It was so spontaneous and funny. So after that, I think I did one more thing, and I just told him, I don't think I can replicate that. Goodbye, everybody. So,
Oh,
yeah, I would say that's a great anecdote I can recall.
so tell everybody and me, how many years have you been honing your craft?
Well, back in the '80s, I had joined you might call it an improv or sketch group, and we did that was a local group. We performed for a few years, but then we broke up, as just like any band story, different personalities and interests. So I decided I would just do stand up on my own. So that lasted for 7 years, but then with one kid already around, and then another baby on the way, it wasn't working. And I always say to people back then is there's nothing glamorous about being a starving artist. There's no
Right.
glamour in it at all. All you're doing is you're starving. You're trying to figure out how to pay your rent. So
Good.
I went, then I just went back into the real work world again. But in 2016, it hit me. When artist says something called me, and they really make it a kind of an out of that body experience. That is, it's not something they decided. It was something that was drawing them, and that was pretty much the case. I just felt that compulsion that I had to do it again. So I just, out of my own just volition of just saying, I've got to do this, is to just go back up and start doing open mics and doing it all over again. So yeah, so that's, wow, 2016. So that's what now, 7 years ago?
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years. Well, eventually someone will pay me to do this.
So where all has your comedy taken you? Like, have you been able to get on good shows and open for good people coming through Troy and Central New York?
Well, we talked earlier about trying to do a kind of comedy that I do, and that it's very different from the observational style. So it just doesn't jive well with people booking bar shows and clubs. So I'll say about maybe, well, actually before the pandemic hit, I started developing my own, in effect, 1 hour show. And I couldn't quite get a full hour in, so I would just book a show where it would basically that I'm doing everything that I wanted to do, and I would have a guest or maybe two guests. And sometimes I would just invite someone who does like a musical guest, so that way it broke it up. Now that the pandemic is fairly settled out, that's what I've been honing in, is developing and then eventually marketing my own 1 hour show, which I did last fall at the Rochester Fringe Festival. And so I'm just then kind of recasting it, just trying to fine tune as much as I can to, go back to original topics of making it accessible but unique, with the notion of eventually then being able to perform this on my own at my own, for the venues that I can market to. So it's a chicken and egg thing, because I have to, most places will only book you if you've got a following. Well, you only get a following if venue's not putting you on. So it's this bit of kind of the sidestep climbing to get showcases, to perform at different locations where I can make a connection. So I'm I'm pretty comfortable that I've got. So now it's just a matter of venues reopening again, so that that
And
they're willing to take an opportunity for someone like myself sending my portfolio to demonstrate that it'll be worthwhile for.
totally. I think my
Still around,
computer
Linda? I
was
see you moving.
my
Oh,
com
okay.
my
Yeah,
computer was timing out because the battery was getting low, so I went and
you're
plugged
freezing
in the
up.
back.
You're freezing up.
So tell
Yeah.
everybody, if you will, as we close out this time together. I'm so glad we had this time together, Carol Burnett. Um, tell everybody where to follow you, please, and where some upcoming things might be happening for you.
Yeah. 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 Right.
Let's see.
Okay, a little bit, but I just do opening up. Is that what you said?
Just a second. I'm not sure that we're in
You're
sync
freezing.
yet. Hold on. Are you there now?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Can you tell everybody where on social media to follow you and where you'll be?
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep. Well, obviously from and it's Ed dot Smyth or Smyth. Some mark. And I have to be honest to myself. Much like it's been working open case. Danny Detchy does that monthly rock and roll speaker and rock and rollers, teachers, and stuff. And then let's blah blah blah. Think. Wait, no. Yeah, and then I'm just doing some small appearances at a really funky coffee house in central New York. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, my main focus right now is just tightening up any more loose ends for each of the acts, and then sending that portfolio out, where I just have to focus more on marketing rather than performing.
Will
So
you,
that's my
my computer,
objective right now.
do me a favor? I had my
Yeah,
cord plugged in for my battery, but it wasn't fully plugged into itself. So please repeat your social media handles.
sure. Okay, so obviously it can easily be found on Facebook under my own name. I have Instagram, I believe it's Smyth.ed. Oh, I know. Actually, I have my own dedicated YouTube channel. If you look up Ed Smyth, and what I have is I have playlists where I put in different um, reels of various folks that I've portrayed on stage, like Oog Son of Og, Rockin' Channel, and Bronco Brad, and Farmer Ted Yergesen, and then the newest one, the Ancient Baby Boomers. We go to Ancient Reels or something like that.
I'm
It's
going there today. I'm going to
oh,
go on
okay,
there and
great.
watch everything and I'll subscribe.
Oh, I appreciate it, Linda. Thank you. Yeah. So these are all kind of the building elements for building a social media awareness. For anyone who's done social media, I know that the mantra is you have to constantly put new, fresh effort into it in order to attract viewers and subscribers. So yeah. So eventually, if I can just focus more energy into that, then through things like this fine interview, well, then that's my intent. Yeah, it's purposeful.
Absolutely. So you're going to be performing at a theater up near where you live, and you'll put
Yep.
that on your social media so people can see.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, Linda, it's really tough getting meaning off Zoom. It's so darn convenient that you take a typical Wednesday night like this week is I'm kind of tired out. It's late at night, but I can do an 8 o'clock Zoom and a 9 o'clock Zoom and a 10 o'clock Zoom and three different performances in one evening. And I didn't have to get dressed or put my shoes on.
So cool. I love it. I don't
I know.
understand, people that missed out on Zoom, they fell behind because we picked up some great skills doing Zoom.
Yes, I always, there had been at times past people quibble about live versus Zoom and that they don't compare. And to me, is I think of it as a false equivalency. The intent is not to compare to each other. Rather, is Zoom is simply a tiny TV show. You get to see this much of me, like I've seen this much of you, and so you just have to perform to the screen. That's all.
That's
In
it.
fact, I've found, Linda, you can tell me if you've experienced the same. There are things that I can do live that work, but don't translate to Zoom. Conversely, there's some visual stuff I've done on Zoom that when I go back doing it live, it just doesn't connect. And I get the impression is because the Zoom with that TV screen persona, their little visual things have more impact versus being on stage and you see someone who basically look like that on, from your point of view.
Yes. I love being on Zoom because, you're right in everybody's lap,
Yep. Oh yeah,
literally.
exactly. Yeah. And so I've taken advantage of that. That's why especially with Oog and Bronco Bread, there's a lot of things that are very visual because I can take advantage of that visual intimacy on screen that, as I shared with you, that you can't doesn't necessarily translate on the stage. On the other hand, is then I found I can do really fun stuff on stage that it's bigger than life, and it just you can't squeeze it into a screen.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love seeing myself and I practice doing my set in different expressions. And I've
Yeah.
gotten, and that the expressions, they translate on stage.
Yeah, that's the biggest advantage of Zoom. You're absolutely right, Linda, is that you can do a lot of different facial things that really make a great impact than to connecting with people watching
Yeah,
versus someone who's very monotone. Da, 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 da. Of course, then I suppose if you're monotone on stage, it's even worse.
I know.
You know what?
I
Actually, you know what I do have found though that doesn't work on Zoom. I've seen people try it. It doesn't work. Is people trying to do crowd work on Zoom? It just doesn't work. They're like this. So and they're trying to almost hold a fake microphone. So how many of you out there on the screen is dating? Silence. Crickets, crickets, crickets. And of course you can't see expressions. I feel bad when someone tries that. I know what they're trying to do, but it doesn't translate.
Yeah. I love it when they have their microphones and their videos off, and I'll go, Betty, you look amazing tonight. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And thank you so much for all your laughter. And being saying the
yeah,
opposite of how I feel.
yeah.
And then Betty will click and show her face and turn on her microphone.
Right. Well, this has been a great conversation, Linda. I appreciate it. You hit me with a lot of different questions I wasn't quite expecting, but I had a good time
Thank you
answering
so
them.
much. You played along very well with my game, and I am
Uh,
so glad to have had you on here. And I know I've
sure.
probably exhausted you, but this has been so rewarding for me. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah,
You
likewise.
guys,
Yeah.
Ed Smyth was here. Yay!
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I remember the way to define an interview, a good interview is a conversation with a purpose.
I like that.
Yeah. So that's what
Yeah,
it
and
is.
I want everybody to fall in love with Ed Smyth like I have. I'm a huge fan and want
Oh,
you to
thank you.
invite him to your city and have him come out and do his absurd comedy. He self-identifies as an absurd comic, right?
Yeah. Okay. So again with you soon, then, Linda, right?
What?
I'll be talking again with you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.